welcome back to another episode. This episode 6 of HR Celebrity. Thank you to everybody who's joined us for the last 6 episodes, and thank you for everybody who's watching today. We've got 2 fantastic guests today, but before we get into that, what this channel is about is we are showcasing HR at a time where HR is vitally important to so many people right now in terms of how to manage staff, how to manage working remotely, how to bring back our staff in terms of coming back to work. So we are really just trying to showcase people as well as businesses who are innovating, who are doing something different perhaps, and we're trying to really just bring that to the forefront. So today we've got 2 fantastic guests. We've got Arthie Moore, the owner of the KI Leadership Institute, who is going to be talking about creating compassionate leaders of influence, as well as Alwyn Naiver, the owner of The About, and a trainer extraordinaire, who's going to be talking to us about the future of blended learning, which obviously at a time like this is going to be so important in terms of what's going to happen next. So without further ado, let's get Arthie on the line and let's have a chat with Arthie. So let's go on the line. There's my awesome Skype call waiting, and we seem to have Arthie. Ooh, it's saying Arthie is unavailable. Let's try her again. Let's try and get Arthie on the line. Otherwise, we'll go to Owen. We have Arthie.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Arthie. Welcome to HR Celebrity. Thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're most welcome. Excited to be on here. This is a fun platform.
It's really become quite an exciting way to really showcase HR. So we're quite excited about it. Arthie, before we begin, tell us a little bit about the KI Leadership Institute and about yourself.
Well, a little bit about it's actually Ki, and it's Ki comes from Japanese for life force essence. My partner and business partner is huge into Aikido, martial arts, and I absolutely love and resonate with anything that's got to do with chi and energy. So Ki Leadership Institute was created as one of our brainchild to address a lot of issues in our work and in our environment and the things that's affecting people in the greater scale of things. And so we came up with Ki Leadership Institute, and we look at how we can bring values-based leadership programs and sustainable personal development into all aspects of our country, how to impact entire countries from squatter camps and orphanages and school systems to top levels of government and corporate companies. So that's a little bit about our Ki Leadership Institute.
And you do some pretty cool projects all over the globe. So maybe you want to touch on some of those.
Well, at the moment, we're busy working with an amazing developer in Sweden, and that is specifically to create a platform for entrepreneurial success, taking people from incubation stage or an idea to completion, and then giving them the opportunity to connect with angel investors who are already on the platform. So it is a really intense, incredible entrepreneurial app that we're developing, and stunning. On the other side, we're working with Bangladesh, Pakistan, and a few other countries to implement the values-based leadership program. And then we're with Lebanon at the moment, launching one of my most passionate subjects, and that is compassion. How can we use courageous conversations and create compassionate people of influence, and values, human behavioral values? So all of those exciting things all in one, but across the globe in many aspects. And it's been an exciting journey so far.
I've said it to Arthie before. Every time I talk to Arthie, I feel like I don't do enough myself. You just have so much going on at a given time. But let's get into creating compassionate leaders of influence. I know this is particularly, this is your game. This is what you're about. And you wrote, what was your inspiration for writing The Value of Compassion?
You know what? For the last 23 years, since I left college, I only spent a year in college, and I went straight into business. And one of the biggest gifts I ever received was connecting with my previous partner. And he worked in a lot of rural areas in this country. So for the first time, coming from my background, the South African Indian culture, having never experienced other cultures in close proximity, at 19 years old, I was able to experience cultures of every environment across South Africa, from languages, belief systems, traditions, religions. And what I found was there was an underlying stream that was in every person that I interacted with. And that was that people just wanted to feel respected, honored, and valued as human beings. That is all they wanted. And they just wanted to be understood. And I found that in our journey of connecting with people, compassion was the most easiest value or trait anybody could embody. And that allowed us to create a program called Celebrating Humanity Experience. And so that is one of the other companies that I've got for the last 20 odd years. But the key focus of that was we created a saying called, at the level of respect, all people are equal. And I thought, if all people are equal at that level,
it's so powerful. Can we just hear that one more time? At the level of respect, all people are equal. I think
people are equal. And
amazing.
In Durban, when we ran the program about 15 or 16 years ago, they actually had our saying put on the back of buses. It was a way to help people to connect past the discrepancies of the past histories of our country, to help people to heal, for them to understand the depth of their humanity and that they're worth it as human beings. And so, I mean, that was my inspiration for looking at how can compassion bring Western principles of business and combine it with African principles of leadership. So all of the things that I learned from the Eastern culture, African cultures, and the Western cultures all had the same stream. And if we came in from a level of compassion and understanding, we do not have to change who we are, but we can adjust to every person and situation and be able to connect with them in a meaningful way. And so for me, that was one of the most powerful ways to interact with people. And I've just been building on that concept for the last few years, and I've been writing a book based on that. And that will be published later this year. So I'm excited about that too.
Well done. That's awesome. So let's go into, when has compassion served you in a meaningfully to resolve conflict within your personal or business life? And I think, touching on leadership is often linked straight into conflict management. Almost inevitably, that's one of the biggest challenges that leaders face, is how to manage conflict within an organization, whether that's cultural, whether that's business, whether that's work performance. How can compassion directly link into dealing with these issues as a leader?
Well,
or from your experience, sorry.
Because I find that in the environments we have found ourselves in, we were always called to resolve conflict where there were gender issues, generational gap issues, racism, blatant anger and disrespect to people from wherever they came from, in the work environment, business environment, even in personal relationships. And I found that for me personally, I'm extremely rebellious. So I have to practice.
Doesn't come across, doesn't it?
Compassion. I had to practice compassion a lot to actually rein myself in and prevent myself from reacting. And I found that just by understanding, so not just being compassionate, I mean more than that, being more understanding of where the person was coming from, asking them good quality questions to gauge what their experience, thoughts, or ideas or expectations were that led them to that. And that was a hard process for me. That meant that I had to keep quiet and not try and resolve the issue immediately by saying to them, get over yourself, you're wrong. I had to step back and listen more carefully and be more thoughtful in my approach. So I find that compassion allowed me to step back and respond rather than react.
You're right. Stepping back is such a hard part as a manager, because you do tend to just put your blinkers on and say, this is what needs to be done. This is how we're going to do it. my way or the highway. I've been there as a manager myself, and sometimes you do just have to think like, but what is that? For lack of a better way of putting it, the empathetic path,
Yes.
and how to respond to that individual on a more personal level, and I think that also stems leadership as opposed to management, and I think maybe that's a big part of it. So, what 3 tips can anyone use today to show compassion in their daily interactions? What's your go-to scorecard?
Okay, so I can talk about what's been working for me so far, but it took me a long time to get there. I think the top 3 would be to listen more intentionally. A lot of times we hear people, but we don't listen intentionally. And I feel that to develop that as a skill, when you listen carefully to what people are not saying, not what you see in front of you, you will be able to gauge from the body language, their tone, the way their emotions and their spirit is showing up in their aura or energy as a human being. You're able to see what people are not saying. That is when you listen with intention. That is the only way we can connect on a deep human level to people and understand where they're coming from. Because a lot of times you could ask somebody, how are you? And they'll say, not bad. But what does that not bad mean? Somebody might say, well, I've had a horrible day. And we'll say, oh, cool, that's awesome. We weren't actually listening to the human being. We were just waiting to accept whatever answer they gave and walk away.
What's that?
Which
Everybody
means that the
says
emotional connection is key.
people listen to speak these days as opposed to listen to hear.
Yes.
And I think that resonates with what you're saying, is that there's constantly this generating of my next answer rather than actually listening to the conversation or listening to the whatever the response is to our question.
So if the first one is listening with intention, the second one would be to share more thoughtfully. Now, I know that for a lot of people, they ask, what has that got to the compassion? It's got everything to do with the fact that you're opening yourself up to allowing people to see the human side of you, not the facade that walks with you into work or into your interactions or what people see behind the scenes. Now everybody's online. How many times do we share thoughtfully? What we'll do is only share what we think people want to hear, or we limit our ability to share so that people don't connect with us. We have these barriers.
Which is so dangerous, especially from the online point of view. We often see people traveling, and we often see, I've had this conversation with my staff a few times where, everybody's life seems better than mine. And in the online world, when we look at everyone's life, the reality is I only post the stuff I want to brag about.
Exactly.
I don't want to post the hard times. I only post the trip to, I don't know, Durban, if I'm lucky. But yeah, it's definitely such a valuable point, though.
Yes. Well, and then so if we take into account listening intentionally and sharing thoughtfully, then the third one would be to engage meaningfully. So when I'm talking about engaging meaningfully, I'm talking about how do we set our intention of the way our words will flow through us into the lives of the people we're interacting with. And we think engaging meaningfully does not mean that we've got to sit and just stare at somebody and give them like direct eye contact and make them uncomfortable. It means that when we're sitting with somebody, they must feel so safe in our presence that they're able to open up and to speak up and feel respected just by being in our presence, which means that it is our choice and our ability and our decision to make sure that when we wake up every day, we set our intention that whoever we interact with, may our words flow through us with love, with care, with thoughtfulness and kindness, and with so much respect that whether we speak to a stranger or we connect with somebody online or we do an update on our social media platforms, the intention is going to be that our words need to resonate with somebody out there to uplift them, empower them, and give them some sense of support, because we do not know where people's journeys are, where their thinking is, and where their life is taking them. what their belief systems are that's holding them back and where their pain and suffering is right now. You don't have to become a counselor, and you don't have to go and resolve every person's issue. The thing, though, is that if we set our intentions in the way we connect with somebody, we have the opportunity to help somebody through their day and make it just a little bit better because they had the opportunity to interact with us in one way or the other. So it's listen with intention, share thoughtfully, and engage meaningfully. That would be the ultimate for me. There's more.
Not easy. Not easy. I'm just saying. So, when you explain compassion to leaders, firstly, do they understand the concept at all? And then, what traits are of compassion are leaders, or what traits are represented with leaders of influence?
Well, that's another great question, and I feel that if I think about it, vulnerability is one of the things that a lot of people talk about right now, but they don't tell you how. Now, when I speak about compassion and vulnerability, I'm not saying that leaders need to sit there and cry and shed crocodile tears to show that they empathize with somebody. When I'm talking about vulnerability, I'm saying it is their ability to share meaningfully. And when they sit with people, before they make a decision, that they need to interact with people where they include the voice of the human being in front of them. Those are the types of people who are able to engage with anybody, anywhere, anytime, regardless of their diversity, their gender, their age, their religion, their language, or even their sexual orientation. It means that a compassionate leader of influence has the ability to see a person for who they are, their skills, their experience, their wisdom, and their knowledge. And what they're able to do is then entice the best out of them. And when they're able to do that, they are then looking at what are the strengths of that human being, how can I engage with them so that I can lift them as they lift others. And you will see that vulnerability has got to do with leaders saying, I don't quite understand how this next step works. We have a strategy, I know what we need to do to implement this, but I'm not sure what to do or how to do it. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on this? If we had to take this step, what direction do you feel would work better? Now, those are engaging questions. That means that a compassionate leader of influence asks quality questions. A coach of mine, Christian Simpson, always says that the quality of your questions is directly related to the quality of the answers you receive, directly related to the quality of the actions you will take, which results in the quality of the life you will have. And what happens is that if you're a compassionate leader of influence, you are looking at the entirety of the human being. You're not just looking at them through the prejudices or the self-limiting beliefs you have or the stereotypes you grew up with. It's without the programming of your past histories that you sit down with the person just as a person in front of you and say, how do you feel about this? And when we engage meaningfully in that way, we're able to draw out that person's experience. And when we listen carefully, we're able to get more ideas from them, which means that a compassionate leader of influence creates solution-focused individuals, which means that you don't have to have conflict resolution, communication skills, emotional intelligence programs, team building, and you don't have to have diversity training if you're able to connect with every person on that level of influence. And it'll keep going back to the whole point of how we started. At the level of respect, all people are equal. And if we started and remained at that point, it does not matter whether the person is battling in the work environment. If I was compassionate enough, I would ask, what's going on? Where are you not comfortable? How can I add value? What skills do you need? How can we best support you? That's a servant leadership. That is how you serve as a leader, rather than just manage human behavioral issues. And I think, that's a key thing. And there are many compassionate leaders out there. They're just frustrated and overwhelmed because they're continuously adjusting to the whole environment that is created because of different laws and policies that prevents them from being able to speak the truth. if that makes sense.
Arthie, I'm looking to my other screen here and I'm seeing the comments are just going through the roof. I've never had this many comments on this show, so there's something resonating here with a lot of people. So that's pretty cool. But let's go into, so you're a compassionate leader, or you're already a compassionate person. How do you stop people from taking advantage of that? And I think we see that quite often where you've got somebody who, a manager or a leader in a business who's particularly caring. I'm going to use caring towards their staff, and it's not a finger, it's an arm. And I think there's this kind of like, I'm going to take as much as I can from this individual. How do you stop being walked over?
I think the best way would be to have courageous conversations based on clarity. When we're able to step up in that form as compassionate leaders of influence, we also need to understand that we're human beings and we need to stand our ground in terms of our beliefs, as long as it includes people and is based on respect and understanding. Our beliefs should remain our own and not be imposed on other people. Now, if you find that you're being taken advantage of because you're extremely compassionate, that is where you come across the bullies in the work environment. You come across the people that would take advantage, and what they do is they get to the point where they use your compassion against you. Now, the interesting thing that I found is that people who abuse your true nature will only do so as long as you allow them to. So now, I know this might be a bit difficult for a lot of people to hear, but I always say that abuse, in one form or the other, will continue. Once you've had a heightened sense of awareness that you don't deserve this, you need to realize that you've been allowing it to happen and that people will take advantage of that for as long as you allow it to.
And we see that in a lot of environments. We see that in volunteer work. We see that in the workplace. We see that right across our lives. If you're the person who gives a lot, you tend to give triple. And if you're the person who doesn't give at all, that person always takes advantage of the person who's giving. And that, I mean, I've seen that in a church environment. I've seen that in my work environment. It's definitely something that people need to work on, like you say, and become aware of when you are being taken advantage of. And then how do you stop it, though?
I can give you a very, very quick analogy that I normally use. And these are all my personal beliefs. I believe that there is a difference between being selfish and selfless. I believe that when you get to that point, you realize when you know your truth and you stand your ground. My personal feeling is that you give yourself full permission. Give yourself full permission that you do not have to like every single person you interact with or meet.
What?
However,
What?
Completion to the sentence. So give yourself full permission that you do not have to like every single person you interact with or meet with. However, your ability to show respect and be respectful is a direct reflection on your character and dignity as a human being.
Do you want to just repeat that for that? I think that's such a powerful... Honestly, talking to Arthie is like one of the most powerful things. Every time it's just like this mind blow every time I talk to you. But maybe if you could just repeat that last sentence.
Okay. So give yourself permission to not like every single person you interact with. However, your ability to show respect and be respectful is a direct reflection on your character and dignity as a human being. Which means that when you interact with people, understand the difference between being selfish and selfless. Selfless is somebody who keeps giving of themselves continuously every single day, the entirety of themselves. A selfish person is somebody who keeps taking and taking and taking. Now, here's the hard part for a lot of people to hear. When you are absolutely selfless and you're always giving, you're the last person at a function, you're the go-to person, you'll give your last bit of money to somebody because they asked you, you will sacrifice everything of who you are to give and add value and serve meaningfully. And they keep taking advantage of you, but you get to that point where you start to resent giving Now you're not giving wholeheartedly. You start to resent giving because your heart is hurting from being used, not being acknowledged, not being given the credit you deserve. In the workplace, in your home, in your environment, in your relationship, with your children, with your spouse, with family. And this happens everywhere. When you get to the point where you understand that being selfless is actually being selfish. And that's a hard one for a lot of people to hear. The reason being is that when you keep giving of yourself, who is filling you? When you keep depleting yourself, where your heart hurts so badly, where your mind is in turmoil, and you go into this depressive state or you're in this dark place, and you wonder, what is this all worth? Why do I get up and I do everything for everybody? When you get to that point, understand that you've been selflessly giving for so long, and you've gotten to the point of being resentful of the giving, that you are now selfish because you're depleting your own spirit, and your soul is crying out for more. At that point, you have got the opportunity to say, no, no more, stop. I am not allowing this behavior. And it's a difficult one to do because a lot of people have been taught that no is a bad word. I'm saying that no gives you back your ability to have a life and a lifestyle you truly deserve. And until you get to that point, you will always be held back by self-limiting beliefs, by your self-confidence and your self-esteem being hit every day, and always wanting more. You'll keep craving more. And the challenge, though, is that you start to attract more abusive people, which means you don't break the cycle. You'll keep attracting the same thing because you've created an environment where you believe you're not worth it. And when you feel not worth it and you're not worthy, you'll attract bad relationships, environments, work environments. You'll allow colleagues to take advantage of you. You'll allow bullies to take advantage of you. And even in relationships, you will keep giving, and then you can't understand why the person doesn't reciprocate. And then you feel unloved even worse. And you see, it is a massive cycle of destruction. And the way to stop it is by understanding another simple saying that I came across. Do not bite the hand that feeds you, but do if it prevents you from feeding yourself. So at some point in your life, you need to step up, step out, and find your voice. And understand that your worthiness is built on you adding to your spirit, your soul, and what makes your heart sing. What makes your soul sing? Not what everybody's been saying to you for so long that's hurting you. Not their words and their negativity. And understand that your circumstances and where you've come from and the words that people have put into your life negatively is not a reflection of who you are and what you can become. So when you understand those nuances in life and you take compassion into yourself as self-compassion, you realize that you need to step back and add to you that you matter, that you are worth it, and that you will build the bridge that leads you in the direction that you deserve and onto the journey that you want and that you crave, and that you can have anything you want to, as long as you set the standards.
Arthie, it's very clear there's so much passion about compassion in your voice. It comes across very strongly. If anybody wants to contact you, I have put your email in the description below. That is all the time we have today, though, but I thank you so much. Like I said, every time I talk to you, it's just like this mind blow of power that resonates. So if anybody wants to touch on that power that you bring, please feel free to drop Arthie an email and get in touch with her directly. So Arthie, thank you so much for being part of the show today. The Key Institute, Key Leadership Institute, I'll say it correctly this time. And and yeah, I mean, thank you so much. It really is such a pleasure to have you with us. And yeah, I mean, from the comments that are coming up, I unfortunately can't get to a lot of them, but yeah, if they want to get hold of you directly, it's available. And again, thank you so much. Really appreciate having you with us.
Thank you, Brian.
Cool.
Have an amazing day.
You too. Cheers.
Okay, bye-bye.
That was Arthie Moore, the owner of the Key Leadership Institute. with us. So thank you again, Arthie. So powerful, so much positiveness about compassion. Really, I'm always inspired when I talk to Arthie. Next we have Alwyn Naiver, the owner of The About, who is a trainer extraordinaire, and he's going to be talking about the future of blended learning. So let's get Alwyn on the line. Can you hear my great music? And we got Alwyn. Hello, Alwyn.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Very well. We can see you. That's perfect. Alwyn, thank you very much for being part of the show today. Thank you and welcome to HR Celebrity. Before we get started, let's tell us a little bit about yourself and The About.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity, and taking over from Arthie is quite hectic. It's quite intense. She's love that.
Very hectic, amazing woman. But listen, you're on the show as well for a reason, Owen. So
it's so weird because the topic talking about blending actually falls into this whole thing. I mean, listening to Arthie talking about bringing information from different cultures into one, finding out where the backgrounds and stuff, we're basically blending. Whereas The About, basically, whereas this was created, I've been working within the skills development sector for 22 years. And with that, I've been in various roles. So The About was all actually on the idea of, if you go to any website and you click on the About page, is what are you about? What is your company about? Where are you at this point? Where are you wanting to grow? And that's actually what The About is really. Was my focus has been mainly on IT end user training as well as soft skills. And this is where, weirdly enough, the blending actually started, where I started to realize that why should we have IT and soft skills as actual separate aspects? So I started actually merging those two parts. So simple ones was where you have your presentation skills with MS PowerPoint, or you have business writing with Word and Outlook. You now have MS Project with project management fundamentals. So it's the merging of both soft skills and IT together. So really, that's the start of actual blending.
So your topic, obviously, the future of blended learning. What is blended learning? I think let's start off with that for the sake of our viewers. And how does it differ from what we're doing right now?
Okay, so blended learning is basically a hybrid. It's a hybrid of your normal classroom training, your normal classroom facilitation, as well as online activities. So online, now I'm not talking about the training, but your e-learning platform. So it's bridging those two together. Now, a lot of people think the blended learning is actually new. I think in South Africa, we actually started taking notice now with this COVID-19.
Yeah, we didn't have much of a choice.
That we actually have this existence. But in actual fact, blended actually started a while back. If you look at historically our traditional training, we used to be known as trainers. What was the job of a trainer? We basically sat and told you the steps in order to actually do something. So if I said, let's make a cup of coffee, I would say step 1, boil kettle. Step 2, add sugar. Step 3, etc., etc. Whereas now we're looking at a whole different approach. We are now facilitators, where we're looking at an idea that everybody learns differently. Each person has their strengths and weaknesses in the way they actually learn. So we need to take all those things into consideration for them to reach the same outcome. The same outcome is to make a cup of coffee. How do you make a cup of coffee and how I make a cup of coffee may be different, but we're still reaching that outcome. So we may have to use various tools to actually get all the learners from their different levels, from their different skills, to actually reach that outcome. So blended learning actually, in a sense, started with that idea already from where we moved from trainers into facilitators. But now we're looking at it in a different spectrum, because now we're not looking at it just sitting in a class, because now we're questioning, is there need for an actual classroom? Well, it's because now we've also got the idea that we can actually do online teaching. So now we can then take online teaching and add that with our e-learning platform. But then, does it work? And that's also the other question. Is it working? A lot of the training providers have been speaking to me and saying, Alwyn, but does it kill that classroom activity? Is it killing that face-to-face interaction?
I suppose that brings me to my next question really on you is, what is the impact on the learner and the facilitator using the technologies that are available?
Well, Brian, first of all, when it comes to blended learning, we've got to first take into consideration the various methodologies and various tools that we actually have. And right now, there's been an influx of tools. In actual fact, I was actually talking about this earlier today. Like, we actually bombarded by so much technology, which in one sense is a good thing, because now there's so much competition. You've got your Zoom, your Microsoft Teams, you've got Google Meet, but which is actually quite nice because each one has something to offer. And with their competition, they're stealing from each other. That's actually bringing out more.
And then you got old-fashioned people like me using Skype.
But there is no kill for Skype, so it's whichever platform. But whichever platform suits that specific need. So blended learning is not just about having just online training. This is also bringing in now the idea of bringing e-learning platforms. So where does e-learning come into the whole spectrum? Because before, we looked at e-learning as something separate, classroom something separate. So when you did classroom training, you took your manual and you left as a learner, and then e-learning was something separate. Whereas now we can actually blend both together. With Zoom, one of the features that's actually been seriously awesome is now the breakout rooms for soft skills training to put people into separate groups. In actual fact, yesterday I was looking at a notification coming from Microsoft where they're actually implementing that in their education system. Now, blended learning, weirdly enough, has been around also within Microsoft and Google. Microsoft for years have been talking about collaboration of their applications. If you look at Office 365, they've actually allowed for that, where you've got the blending of all the applications into one. G Suite, in actual fact, when I was studying the Google Educator exams, it was actually the first time that I actually looked at the word blended. And I didn't even realize this was an actual word that we've been using for a while. And Google actually implemented that as part of their education system. And that's why they've got Google Classroom. So now all of the applications are actually working through Google Classroom to get the end result, to get that outcome. So you're using your docs, you're using Google Drive, you're using Google Sheets and stuff to actually use as you would use in Microsoft with your OneDrive, your Word, your Excel. But now you're actually putting it into Google Classroom as an educator, even in a school environment. So it's actually becoming more than just utilizing an application on its own. And I think that's where traditionally we came with, okay, we're going to learn Word today. We're going to learn Excel today.
And I think through the pandemic, a lot of the classrooms or the schools have taken up Google Classroom. I think that's been one of the more popular suites that have been utilized in terms of immediate adaptation into the online or blended learning channels. It's a phenomenal program, Google Classroom, and the educators seem to be very, very fond of it. I haven't used it personally, unfortunately. I can't comment from a direct point of view. However, my family member is a teacher and educator themselves, and they've been using it quite fondly. So I do believe that it is very well uptaken.
Yes, definitely has. A lot of the schools, especially your high-end schools, have actually adopted this platform. I must admit, sadly, in South Africa, we do have restrictions and stuff as far as what people can utilize.
Well, I suppose that's a point to touch on is how does blended learning, how are we able to work within a South African context within this, knowing that data is an issue, knowing that access to devices, even in many cases, is an issue. So how are we able to operate within a South African context? Is this a realistic platform for us to channel our energies into, knowing that many of our students won't have access to it?
Now, that's the reality. I must admit, it's one of the biggest challenges that has happened right now, even at schools, where certain schools, the parents said, no, we need to send our children back because why? We don't have the actual tools, we don't have data, etc. So now what certain schools did allow was to actually buy data for the learners as well as the teachers. Certain training providers actually started selling their courses with actual data availability and access to information and things using like Vodacom and MTN providers to assist to make it cost effective. So that's now actually been the newer thing as far as sales goes, as was so that they can actually sell their courses, because a lot of the courses are not being sold because people are saying, but how do we even access this? How do we even go online? We can't go online. So we are restrictive on a South African context. When I look at overseas right now, they have been working as normal, because they have the infrastructure that enables them. In Finland, in actual fact, they're starting to look at trainers being only virtual trainers. There's a few companies that I've been talking to, they're all known as virtual trainers. So they do all training through a virtual platform, utilizing all the different tools and stuff to their disposal. Coming back to where we spoke about the trainers and facilitators, what's actually quite good in a South African context. I think we're starting to also see there are cost factors that we can now eliminate. Before, facilitators, when we were moving around all over the place, now we don't. We're actually saving on those costs, from travel and travel costs even to the clients. So clients are saving on that. In actual fact, some clients started looking at this new system where we're working at home as a way also on saving costs of rents and the rentals within their businesses. So they actually now saying, should we now close some sectors off and work from home? Should administration happen from home? So we're now cutting on costs in that sector. Whereas we're now also a bit more flexible. And then students also do not have to travel those distances. So they're also saving costs as far as distance goes. Now, the only aspect as far as the challenge goes for the student is that we don't have, as a student, the interaction that you'd have in class in the sense of one-on-one. So a lot of the interaction is still based on what's happening within that online class environment that the facilitator is creating. The facilitator now also has to look at more methods. It can't be just that simple one flip chart method. We're now looking at variations of methods. So you're looking at a PowerPoint presentation, a video, because the learner's attention span on an online training is actually less than what it used to be. And so they can sit in a class and focus on a person for longer hours, whereas now they're struggling to actually spend an entire day that we're having to split our sessions.
I've noticed from a personal point of view, the challenge that I've got is that the learners just get up, and I mean, when I say learners, my kids, when they are on these Zoom sessions and online sessions, they just get up and walk out once they've gotten bored, which obviously you can't do in a classroom. I can imagine adult training and adult education would be a very similar challenge in that people can just stop listening, stop carrying on. I know I was on a course a little while ago where I had a similar thing where I kind of got through 4 hours online, and then I thought, I've just had enough, and I've pulled out completely. So I do think that is a challenge, that you can't engage on the same level and for the same amount of time without really thinking about what is the structure that this is going to take place.
Yes, no, definitely. And that's why I think when we're looking at blended learning, what is that blended learning? What are the tools available so that the facilitator can utilize as many tools to allow those learners to be interactive, to actually gain more from it, because there's a lot more distractions also, because talking about adult training, you've got your children running in the back, you've got the dogs, you've got your phone now, even more so than what we used to have just in the classroom. So there's a lot to deal with than we used to as far as the classroom. So those are your major challenges. You can place rules within what regulations that you want to follow in the duration of that class, but they're also limited because this is also adult learning. And then, so we've also learned the human factor, and that's what I like what Arthie spoke about earlier, that human factor, that things happen. We need to stop being that robotic people, and we now need to say, well, we're human. So if a dog barks, let's enjoy it. Bring the dog, add the dog as part of your actual class. Whereas you've got the child roaming around, why not? Because that is our human factor. And things now in the the traditional class methods, we never did that. Whereas it wasn't allowed. You never brought your child or the dog in.
I suppose it's the difference, like you say, it's the difference between facilitator versus teacher.
Yes.
It's that adaptation into everybody operates in a different way, and we need to address them in a different way. So therefore, if somebody can't concentrate for longer than 5 minutes, we've got to find ways to engage them on a more personal level. Yeah.
Exactly. And as I said, now with looking at this blended idea, if you look at our learnerships, I'm actually currently doing facilitating a learnership at the moment. And if you look at learnerships, we don't have enough days to actually finish that entire qualification. So we've actually already started blending the ideas. So you've got those days that you train a facilitator course, and for your learners to then leave to actually then do some self-studying, project-based training. So you give them a project to work on and set a deadline and things. Now we're looking at adding videos to this. We're looking at e-learning platforms. We're looking at other tools to integrate. And I'm using a lot of Google. So I've got a lot of my learners using Google Drive, interacting through Google Drive, Google Classroom, and as well as Microsoft Teams. And I've actually utilized both Google and Microsoft Teams for my learnerships to get that outcome, because they don't have enough time in that period. So through this, in actual fact, the other day, I actually had learners who decided to get together on a Sunday and asked me if I want to join, so they can actually help each other using Microsoft Teams. And what's awesome with Microsoft Teams, as well as if you look at Zoom, is that you can request control. So if it is an application that they're working in, they can request control, even as us as facilitators, as you would do in a class if a learner was struggling. I've actually stopped actually presenting in my class. I get my learners to present. So they actually play facilitator. So now as they facilitate, I guide them using the words, and they actually then take themselves through it and help each other in that way, because now they actually requesting control. They taking over the class. They're making it as part of them. And I was actually quite blown away when I saw my learners actually playing facilitator with each other and guiding each other, leading each other towards that same outcome.
So, Alwyn, how can training providers and companies work together to enhance some of these methodologies?
Okay, I think, first of all, training providers have to start looking at what's out there. And I think a lot of training providers are still in the traditional mindset. Like I said, I'm still getting training providers who are sitting and saying, no, but you can't get past classroom training. And in actual fact, you can. And things, we need to start looking at the other tools available to change that. So I think that's our starting point. Secondly, yes, we are limited in South Africa as far as data and connectivity and access. And I think we need to look at maybe ways in order to build better relationship with our providers to maybe sell that as part of our packages. So that's from a training provider's point of view. As far as companies go, I think the idea, having your learners leave the company makes better sense for them, for certain companies, where certain companies, as you know, prefer having a boardroom and you're sitting there at the boardroom. Now it's just to get...
I know from my experience, a lot of guys, when I had people leave the company, they'd leave on the bus and never arrive at the training venue. And I think that's been a big challenge for a lot of companies when employees are going to training but never arriving at the training. It's sort of seen as a day off rather than a learning opportunity as well as a mandatory learning opportunity.
Yes. So, yes, but that's always been, I think, the case. I think people sometimes always ask, what is your objective? And be honest, the objective is here to eat, relax, and have a holiday. And
food seems to be a common thread, I must be honest.
It does. I think it brings people together. And there's nothing wrong by admitting it. In actual fact, I get my learners to admit that right from the beginning. You on a holiday, and that's what this is. You're on a holiday. So let's make the best of this holiday. Let's get all the sights in. Let's get all the understanding of what we're seeing and things around us to take it as a little picture.
I absolutely love that, Owen. I must be honest. The fact that we take the fact that we on a perceived holiday, but obviously you're using that to enhance all learning opportunities with that particular learner. I love that analogy, which you just, it's such a great way of looking at it. So yes, you're on holiday, but you're going to see all the sights anyway.
But that's that's what it is, Brian. I think the problem is with us, with the implementation of assessments and the implementation that we have to fit in a course content within that short period and stuff. I think we lost the plot with that, and that's why we need to keep something that we always were, and that was what are the learners going to take back. And I always tell my learners, you are never going to know everything of everything that I show you. That's not possible. Even if I take a 2-day course and put it over a month with the same content, you still won't take everything. And whereas it's going to take time. And what I'm only looking for is for you to take what you need now. And things, and that's what it was. Then you build from what you need now. And once you build what you need now, you enjoy it. So even if that learner is taking a little bit, that's already progress and stuff, because they already took something from that actual session. So you don't want to bombard them with everything and expect. And I think that's what's actually been happening a lot, is the expectation that you should know everything when you leave, and no learner will ever do that.
Or when we are running out of time, so I'm going to hit you with one last one. What is the future for classroom training? Is this the end of classroom training?
I don't think so. I think there's still a place for classroom training. I just think it's going to change in the way we provide classroom training. I can see even a blended classroom training where we are sitting with people in our classes while we're still actually having a Skype session or even a team session with people outside of the class. So now we've got people not just within the classroom, but people outside on an online basis. So I don't think the full classroom aspect is going to change, but us as training providers, facilitators, even companies have to now look at how we merge the actual two.
I suppose the message there is that we have to adapt. We
Yes.
can't just be stuck in our box. We can't do this and say, this is how we do it. This is what we've done. We have to change in order to survive through this, to continue sharing education with our learners. I mean, I suppose that's the bottom line. Is that?
Yes. Did you watch the movie called Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore?
I didn't know.
Do yourself a favor and watch it. It's actually been on DSTV for the last few days, and I thought that was actually quite interesting, where it's blended families, different types of families, actually trying to build relationships together to make it work. And when I was actually watching this movie, I thought, how relatable is that to actually what we're dealing with, where you have people who are restrained to actual change, and those that actually manage to blend easily. And things. So in actual fact, when you watch that movie, keep that in mind. I thought it was actually quite awesome to what we're actually going through in society right now.
Owen, thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to get hold of Owen, you can look at your email in the description below. So much stuff going on today. If anybody wants to get hold of you, they can. Trainer extraordinaire, owner of the About. If anybody wants to get hold of you and continue the conversation, they can. But thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate having you on HR Celebrity today.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Owen. Cheers.
Enjoy.
That was Alwyn, the owner of The About. Training extraordinaire. Thank you again, Alwyn, for your time. Really appreciate having you. Guys, that really brings us to the end of this episode 6. And I've got one last request for everybody. If you could please subscribe, click the button, and get notified of our next show every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Next week we've got 2 great guests coming on. Again, the point of this is really just to showcase HR and showcase HR people, processes. We are going to get a little bit more meaty next week in terms of hardcore HR. I think today was phenomenal, though. It was really mind-blowing, really inspirational, and really creative in terms of what's next, what's going to happen, what the future holds. So thank you to everybody who has watched today and who is continuing to support us. So thank you very much to everybody. Have a great week ahead. Cheers.